Hi Yuri, this is Mike from Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine, and this is your Bernina, and this is the final test before we pack her up to ship her out to you. And I hope you will excuse my I just had some dental surgery and I'm not entirely recovered, so I hope you can understand me well enough. So here goes. So in your case here we have your attachment set, your can't see it very well, but your slide on bed extension is here, and your user manual and your knee lifter bar are in here. So we don't really need any of this. Knee lifter bar is pretty self-explanatory. It goes into the socket here on the side of the bed. Kind of hard to miss. Your foot control is here, and your little accessory box that you can hang on the arm of the machine while you're sewing, so you can reach your all your gadgets that you need right away. You can put your pins in there, you can put your different sewing feet in there, bobbins, thread, whatever, just whatever you might need while you're sewing. And the cord plugs into the back of the machine. It can only go in one way. Got special cutouts that force you to only insert it in one direction. Also, we've got a bit of a windstorm kicking up out there, so the door may bang occasionally. So, in this test, we're going to go over how to thread the machine, how to wind the bobbin, and just generally how to work the various controls. So let's de-thread the machine for starters. Your bobbin is in the bobbin case down here below the bed. Make sure your needle is up before you try to pull your bobbin case out. Got a little bit of thread on there, which I'll pull off. You can start with a nice fresh bobbin. So your bobbin winder is on the top here, and to wind the bobbin, put a spool on the spool pin. And since it's got two thread spools, you could actually, if you wanted to, wind bobbins as you sew, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to declutch the machine so the rest of it doesn't cycle while we're threading. So put your spool on the spool pin, go around the bobbin winder tensioner here, and cross back over your thread and back to the bobbin winder. Put your thread through the little slot in the side of the bobbin and hold it there while you give it a few wraps just to hold the thread in place while it winds. You're going to want the thread to be coming on over the bobbin in this direction. Just press it right down there on the spindle. push the little what you collar in there, and then declutch your machine by turning the knob in the center of the hand wheel towards you, eighth of a turn or so, till it hits its stop. And that declutches the machine. Now you just give it a little bit of gas, and no reason to go fast. You're more likely to tangle up your thread if you do. In fact, it's a good idea to put a finger on your thread spool to keep it from spinning out of control and the thread tangling up below the spool and other nonsense like that. So here we go. We're not going to thread a full bobbin because we don't need much for a test. Pull the, what do you call this thing? I'm sure it's got a name. It's the thingy that pushes into the bobbin. And as your bobbin fills, say you're sewing and filling a bobbin at the same time, as the spool fills, the thread's going to push this thing further and further out until it releases and the bobbin stops winding. Again, if you're winding while you're sewing, you do not declutch the machine. So now reclutch your machine by tightening the knob in the center of the hand wheel. Don't over tighten it, just snug. Now with your thread coming off the top of the bobbin in this direction, drop it into the bobbin case and direct the thread into the little slot in the side and up under the leaf spring till it clicks into place. With this little finger pointing up, slide the bobbin onto the shaft of the hook down below, and make sure that little finger goes into the cutout that's made for it, and the bobbin will sort of click into place. Do you thread the machine? And we'll do that with some red thread. Put your spool on the spool pin. Go into the thread guide on the back of the machine, across through the slot on the top, and down below the thread guide on the face of the machine. And then with the take-up lever all the way up, just put your thread over the top of the take-up lever and it'll slide into the slot. And then down to the thread guide on your needle clamp. Just, and carefully don't do what I just did and get your thread wrapped a second time around that thread guide. There we go. It's easy to accidentally wrap around things. Make a nice clean end on your thread. That makes it way easier to thread the needle. And go through from front to back through the eye of the needle. Holding your needle thread loosely, turn the hand wheel towards you one full revolution, and the needle will take the thread down. Wrap the thread around itself there. Is that cool? That's cool. Hold your needle thread, turn the hand wheel towards you one full revolution. The needle will take the thread down where the hook will pick it up, wrap it around the bobbin, and bring up your lower thread. Put your thread between the toes of the presser foot and towards the back of the machine, and you're ready to sew. Your light switch is here. Selector to turn on the power. That always helps. Why don't I have power? Okay, got power. Why don't I have light? Okay, I may need to replace that bulb. So, put your fabric under the presser foot, and we're going to use some denim, a pair of jeans, and we're going to sew 2 layers of denim here. First thing you want to do is set your stitch. First, you're going to want to set the levers on the top. If you're sewing straight stitch, you want this lever here with the all of the on the top. There's a list of different stitch patterns that you can sew. Hold your lever towards the back of the machine and slide it down to the 0 position. 0 position is for straight stitch and zigzag. The second lever over here has 2 settings. It has 1 through 20 and a zigzag. You want to be in down in the zigzag position. This is your stitch length here. Turn the knob to go from 0 anywhere along here down to 4, which is your longest stitch length. 0. At 0, the fabric doesn't move. As you go down from 0, your stitches get longer and longer and longer. Till down at 4 is your longest stitch length. This up here is your stitch width, how wide it zigzags. At 0, you're sewing a straight stitch. At 4, you're sewing a wide zigzag. So, and then you have the full array in between. So we're going to put it on 0. We're going to sew a straight stitch, and we're going to go down to about 2 for our stitch length. Nice well-balanced stitch. Give it a little more stitch length. All the way down to 4. You can see that now it's sewing much longer stitches. I'm going to take it back up to about 1 and 1.5 on the stitch length. Such a nice smooth machine. Berninas are just the best. So if you want to sew a zigzag, now you want to add some stitch width. So we're going to go up to about 2, and we'll do a medium-sized zigzag. And now you can see your machine is cycling back and forth. Now we're going to go all the way up to 4, and always have your needle up out of the fabric when you change your stitch width or stitch pattern. So we're going to take that on up to 4. And you're sewing a much wider zigzag now. If you're going to sew a really close zigzag, it's called a satin stitch, where it just looks like one fat line. You want to be way up here, almost to 0, not quite to 0. Because if your fabric's not moving while you're sewing, then your the thread mounts up there and creates a ball under the needle plate, and fabric can't move. You always want your fabric to be moving while you're sewing. And way up here near zero, there's a fat mark, which is your satin stitch mark. And then the stitch you're sewing just looks like a wide stripe. And of course, you can regulate that down to a narrow stripe, or even narrower. Let's take that all the way down to zero again. Go back up to about 2, and go over here. Now, take your needle up out of the thread, we're going out of the fabric, and we're going to do a stitch pattern. This lever here is, as I had said earlier, your stitch pattern selector, and you have a lot of different options here. You have a blind stitch, you have a scallop stitch, you have a whole bunch of stitches that I don't even know names for. But let's go down here to number 1. We'll do a blind stitch. And now we need to take the second lever off of the zigzag mark and up to the number 1 through 20 position, because you have 20 more stitches here that you can try out. We're not going to do them all, but we'll do 1 or 2 just so you have a good idea. And you may already be very familiar with this machine. So this may be redundant, but just in case, I think we want to add some stitch width to do the blind stitch. That's where it does several straight stitches in a row and then 1 zigzag stitch, several more, and then 1 zigzag stitch, which has special uses, and you can read about that in your user manual. Yeah, I have to add some stitch width to tell it how wide to make that zigzag. You know, every 4th stitch or so it's making a zigzag. Nice blind stitch. Okay, take the needle up out of the fabric again. Let's go up to one of these fancy patterns. We're going to do stitch number 10, which looks like a kind of a wide, sinuous line. And again, for this one, may need some stitch width. It's probably obvious that I am not a seamster. I am a technician. But I've sewn miles and miles and miles of test seams, so I have a fair idea what I'm doing. We're going to take the stitch length back up into the satin stitch area, that fat mark just below the 0, and that's going to bring our stitches real close together, so it makes a decorative, sinuous decorative line. And here we go. Oh yeah, that's lovely. You may be able to see that one. The camera doesn't always pick up the stitches too well. But this is that first wide line that we did, the first satin stitch. This is the blind stitch, which I doubt you can see. But you can probably see this sinuous wide line here. Take the fabric away. turn it, then we'll take the needle up out of the fabric, and we'll go to just another random fancy stitch here. Let's go up to number 16. It's kind of cool looking. Your user manual is very descriptive, and it'll tell you how to actually do how to set the stitch for each of these different stitch patterns, where to put your stitch width, where to put your stitch length. This center knob I didn't mention, in the center of the stitch width knob is gives you the ability to alter your stitch pattern slightly. Doesn't change the stitch pattern, but it might make it wider or longer, or just give you a little more flexibility in what your stitch result will look like. This switch down here switches between fast and slow. It's marked max and min, obviously. Okay, so we've been on max, and I'm going to go back to the 0 position on the stitch pattern selector, back to zigzag on the second lever here, and we're going to go back to a straight stitch, which is 0 on your stitch width. We'll go down to about 2, which is a good average for regular fabric. Now we'll be sewing a straight stitch, and I'm going to switch over to min. So if you're doing some real, tricky patterns and you want to have a whole lot of control, you can slow way down. So you're going about half as fast now. You can just chug along real slow. But most of the time you probably want to be in the max position. Let's see, what else do we have? We have over here your tension, and there is a little window here that shows you your where your tension is set. Right now it's on the center line, but you can turn it so it goes more towards the negative sign. If you want a little less tension, say you're sewing something delicate and you're using fine thread and a thin needle, and maybe you want to sew something heavy duty and you put a size 16 needle in and some heavy thread, you might want to go up more into the plus position and also do a longer stitch. Again, you'll find all of that in your user manual, but we're going to set it right there in the center for your average fabric, average thread, average needle. It's going to come with the size 14 needle in it, which is what you use for like shirting or denim, unless you get into some really heavy denim, and then you may want a heavier needle. But this is a size 14 sharps needle for woven fabric. Over here we have the buttonhole. So let's get a nice open spot on our fabric. Let's make a buttonhole. It's got 5 positions, and those positions would probably be the top bar, the right side bar, bottom bar, and the left hand bar. But it might not be in that particular order. Let's see. 0 position is no buttonhole, obviously. Needle is up out of the fabric. We're going to go to position 1. And you can see that it set itself at stitch width number 2. So that is probably the top bar. No, it's not. So we're going to go all the way up. We're going to reset the stitch length up into the satin stitch area. And it's going to sew, looks like the left side. Now we're going to go to position 2. And the stitch with the width has gone up to 4. So that will be the bottom bar. But just a few stitches there. Position 3, the stitch width has gone back to 2. Now it's going to sew in reverse and sew the, I think the right side. Let's see. Okay, I put too many stitches and it's gotten itself stuck. So don't put too many stitches in the bar. Again, your user manual will tell you how to actually sew a buttonhole. So now we're going to go out the right hand side of the buttonhole, and at the top of the buttonhole you're going to want to make your top bar, which would be position 4. And I see there at the position 5, and I have no clue what position 5 does. It went all the way to 0. I guess that in case maybe that lines the inside of the buttonhole. Let's see what it does. Going back down. Yeah, no clue. Look it up in your user manual. But it works great, whatever it's doing. That is a nice looking buttonhole. Or it would be if I hadn't put too many stitches in the bar and got it stuck. But let's do that one more time, just for fun, since now I have a kind of a clue. Of course, I was all over the inside of this machine, so I am familiar with the machine, just not real familiar with the buttonholes. Yeah, I believe that this sewed the left side first. Let's do that. There's the left side. Now we're going to do the bottom bar, and we're just going to put 1 or 2 stitches in. Now we're going to do the right side. Then we're going to do the top bar. Okay. Oh yeah. Maybe you can see that. Maybe you can't. That's a fine looking buttonhole. Then of course you have to use your buttonhole knife or a little razor blade or something to cut out the center of that buttonhole. Anyway, buttonhole. Beautiful buttonhole. Wow, I'm so proud. So I think that that's just about everything, other than replacing that light bulb. And of course the light bulb is in here. Let's make sure it's tight first of all. It's not too tight, so it must just be, the bulb must have burned out. I'll take care of that. Anyway, we'll get her packed up and ship her out to you. And thank you, Yuri. Much appreciated.